You were given a great deal of access in order to do this, over 100,000 pages. Would you characterize, I realize you didn't look at every page every day, but would you characterize, were all 100,000 pages ones that you would have made available to this committee? Were you deciding to have us see those documents? As you know, we received less than 8,000 pages.
Well, as we went through, I have to, personally, I didn't obviously go through myself the 100,000 plus pages, but
I'll ask it in reverse. Maybe is probably better. Do you know of pages that you saw that Congress should, for good cause, be denied?
Every document we asked for and reviewed and cited in this report, we found to be relevant and important. And in fact, we don't cite in this report every single relevant document. We obviously had to pick and choose. So certainly what we've seen and we asked for and saw, we determined was relevant.
So it would be fair to say the documents from post-February 4th, which you evaluated, saw, and helped you prepare this report, in which executive privilege was not claimed, were relevant, you used them, and they should have been provided to Congress in the ordinary course. They are being provided indirectly at this time.
We certainly found they were relevant, which is why we insisted on reporting on them, Mr. Chairman.
Now, there were a number of people people you didn't get to speak to. I'll note, I guess, Mr. Cunningham spoke to you and then later would not speak to you. Kevin O'Reilly, can you tell us a little bit about your efforts to try to interview Kevin O'Reilly, a member of the National Security Team?
We reached out to his lawyer, requested an interview. We have no basis to compel interviews from individuals who are outside the Department of Justice. He does not work in the Department of Justice, so we had to ask for a voluntary interview, and he denied his lawyer told us he would not appear voluntarily.
Would it surprise you that he's been in Afghanistan and we've been denied even the ability to serve a subpoena on him?
I was not aware of where he was, but I was told by his lawyer.
I'm sorry, Iraq. Sorry.
As I said, we weren't. I don't recall knowing myself where he was, but we were told by his counsel he would not appear voluntarily.
Okay. Also, there was a full-time employee of the Department of Homeland Security. Would you explain to us your efforts to interview that individual?
Yes. There was an agent from the Department of Homeland Security that was assigned to the operation as part of our effort to be thorough and interview all people who might have relevant information. We reached out. He, again, is outside the Department of Justice, so he declined our voluntary request to be interviewed by us. We sought through the Department of Homeland Security to speak to him, and we understood that absent being compelled and given immunity, that he would not speak voluntarily, and that request was declined, is my understanding.
Now, pursuant, and this is outside of, I admonished everyone to stay on to this, but I think for this particular case, I want to go outside the scope of this somewhat. We are the committee that will oversee a change in the IG Act, if there is one. In your opinion, if the IG Act had created a mechanism for you to fully vet these requests, even if these were individuals outside of your particular narrow agency, is that something you believe would be helpful, speaking as an IG, for future investigations?
Yeah, certainly, we would have used whatever authorities we had to seek testimony from individuals, as we were able to do internally within the Justice Department. So having expanded authority would have certainly allowed us to take additional actions here.
Were you ever made aware why Secretary Napolitano, the Department of Homeland Security, was unwilling to have an individual who worked in an OCDEF of such a fatally flawed event, one that killed one of her charges, one of the Border Patrol that falls under her cabinet position, why she wouldn't insist that that individual speak to you in this investigation?
I don't know personally that information, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Now, one of the two last areas, it has been said by many, mostly on the other side of the aisle, that there's nothing in these wiretap applications that would have caused senior officials to see any red flags as to the reckless tactics. Now, realizing these documents are not unsealed, would you characterize for us whether you would say, as your report does, and I'll read this, but I'd like you to elaborate, Among the report's other conclusions, your findings that wiretap applications approved by senior officials did contain red flags about reckless tactics who should have acted on this information, and it goes on. That line, are we to conclude that, in fact, if you read one or more of these 14 wiretap applications, you should have known that guns were walking?
Yes, as we said in the report, and I also myself reviewed the 14 applications, believe that if you were focused and looking at the question of gun walking, you would read these reports and see many red flags, these affidavits, and see many red flags in our view.
Okay, and ask unanimous consent for just one more question, without objection. In your report, there was an area that I focused on a little bit where it implied that Lanny Brewer did not respond or did not acknowledge the February 4th letter. Isn't it true that Lanny Brewer, in fact, answered "good job" as at least an answer to the February 4th letter, acknowledging that he had received it and obviously made that comment?
That's correct.
And on that day, on February 4th, wasn't he, in fact, on his way to Mexico City to sell the Mexican government on what was effectively a gun-walking program coordinated with them?
Well, my understanding is actually was in Mexico, and my understanding was that he had raised the possibility of some program involving cross-border cooperation about gun trafficking activity, but frankly, I don't have more knowledge than that at this point.
Thank you. I recognize the ranking member for his questions.